In the early 1950s, some people were given powerful psychoactive drugs. They didn't consent. They weren't told. They weren't criminals. They weren't enemy agents. They were ordinary citizens. Some were students. Some were hospital patients. Some were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. They were dosed, observed, recorded. And the people watching them weren't doctors conducting medical research. They were intelligence officers. This wasn't an underground cult. It wasn't a rogue laboratory. It was a classified government program, funded, authorized, protected. Its purpose was simple: to understand how the human mind could be influenced or broken. And when the public finally began to uncover fragments of what happened, most of the evidence had already been destroyed. This was MKUltra. Welcome to the Umbral. The story of MKUltra does not begin with experimentation. It begins with fear. In the aftermath of World War II, the world did not settle into peace. It shifted into tension. The Cold War was not just about missiles or territory. It was about intelligence, control of information, control of influence, control of perception. Reports began circulating that foreign adversaries were experimenting with psychological techniques, brainwashing, behavioral conditioning, methods capable of reshaping belief. American officials became concerned not only about what enemies might do, but about what might already be possible. The question was no longer, can we control territory? It became, can we control thought? In 1953, under the direction of CIA Director Allen Dulles, a program was formally authorized. Its name was technical, unremarkable, administrative, MKUltra. On paper, its purpose involved research into interrogation resistance and defensive psychological methods. But internally, the scope expanded. It would not only study influence, it would test it. Funds were quietly distributed to universities, research institutions, hospitals. Front organizations were created, contracts were signed, grants were awarded. Many participating researchers did not know the true sponsor behind the funding. Others did, and said nothing, because the Cold War justified extraordinary measures, or so it seemed. The experiments varied. Some involved hypnosis. Some involved sensory deprivation. Some explored the limits of sleep deprivation. But the most infamous component involved chemical substances. LSD became central. At the time, its effects were still poorly understood. That uncertainty made it valuable. Subjects were dosed without warning, in safe houses, in clinical settings, in controlled environments, sometimes in public spaces. They were observed through one-way mirrors. Their reactions were documented, their confusion analyzed. In certain operations, individuals were lured into monitored rooms, given substances secretly, and studied as their perception fractured. This was not random, it was structured. Operation Midnight Climax, one subproject, used covert apartments to test behavioral responses under intoxication. The justification remained consistent. If adversaries were exploiting mind manipulation, America needed to understand it first. But the line between defense and experimentation blurred. Consent became optional, ethics became secondary, and the data accumulated. Some participants experienced lasting psychological damage. Others never fully understood what had happened to them because they were never told. As MKUltra expanded, its objectives shifted. It was no longer only about interrogation resistance. It became about influence. Could a personality be destabilized? Could memory be altered? Could belief be implanted? Researchers studied fragmentation of identity, psychological vulnerability, suggestibility. Some experiments attempted to create states of extreme compliance. Others tested thresholds of stress to observe mental breakdown. Funding moved through layers of bureaucracy. Sub-projects multiplied. Over 150 separate lines of research. Universities received grants without full disclosure. Hospitals conducted studies without patients understanding the sponsor. The structure was intentional. Compartmentalization protected the whole. Few people saw the complete picture. Most saw only their fragment, and fragments are easier to justify. Meanwhile, within classified circles, reports were written, evaluations drafted, recommendations made. The human mind had become a frontier, not of philosophy, but of strategy, and as the Cold War intensified, the program continued. By the early 1970s, public trust in institutions had begun to erode. Investigations into intelligence agencies increased. Questions were asked. Requests for documentation were filed. And inside the CIA, a decision was made. In 1973, under orders from Director Richard Helms, a large portion of MKUltra-related files were destroyed. Boxes of records were eliminated, reports shredded, archives cleared. The official explanation was administrative housekeeping, but the timing was significant, because soon after, congressional inquiries began examining intelligence activities. Without complete documentation, the scope of MKUltra became difficult to reconstruct. Fragments survived: financial records, isolated memos, testimonies. Enough to confirm the program existed, enough to reveal unethical experimentation, but not enough to fully map its extent. When Senate hearings took place in 1977, officials acknowledged parts of the program. They described research, they described chemical testing, they described destruction of files, but gaps remained. And gaps invite uncertainty. The public learned of MKUltra not because it was voluntarily disclosed, but because pieces slipped through the cracks. And once revealed, the program was formally terminated, at least officially. MKUltra was not a rumor. It was documented, funded, authorized. It involved universities, medical institutions, government agencies, and it operated for 2 decades. The Cold War justified extraordinary measures, but justification does not erase consequence. Some subjects were never informed, some were permanently affected, and much of the evidence was intentionally destroyed. What remains today is incomplete, a program acknowledged but not fully understood, a record confirmed but not entirely preserved. The question is not whether MKUltra existed. It did. The question is, how much was truly revealed? Because when records are erased, we are left with fragments, and fragments are never the full story. Until the next Umbral.